morning, folks. I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Tim Wheaton with MMA Sucka, joined as always by the editor at MMA Sucka, Frazer Krohn. Frazer, how's everything today, man?
Yeah, we were just saying, last weekend we had obviously quite a busy weekend with one X and the UFC, and then this weekend we've got a quiet weekend, so it'll be mostly a breakdown show, I think, this weekend from us two of one championship and the UFC that went down, and then we might jump into some fight announcements because it's been a busy week for McMahon and Sean Shelby this week.
Man, it's always a busy week for those two boys. Nathan Diaz has asked for a release out of contract, tagged the wrong Hunter Campbell on Twitter, which is always a classic. Always tag the wrong person, always talk to the wrong John Jones and folks like this. What's going on with Nate? Do you think he's trying to box Jake Paul? Like this has to be the thing that he's trying to do, yeah?
I think he's trying to stay relevant, to be honest. He's it's difficult for Nate, I think, because he hasn't fought. The last time he fought was last year against Leon Edwards, and you can't lose 24 and a half minutes of a fight, tag someone, and then point at them, and in my opinion, still stay relevant in the sport for the hardcore fan. For the casual fan that maybe didn't watch that fight, you've got the picture of Diaz pointing at Edwards like, "Look, I got you," but
yeah.
They didn't watch the 24 and a half minutes where Leon Edwards scored Nate Diaz. They didn't watch the fight before when Jorge Masvidal pretty much dominated Nate Diaz. Diaz is always going to be money. He's always going to be one of those guys that, we tune in for, the fight week itself, the antics. But if you're looking at really, he's looking for fights, but he doesn't, he strikes me as the kind of person that doesn't always accept the fights that are given to him. He's quite picky. He wants to Dustin Poirier, which for me is probably the fight to make at 165. But we know that won't happen. He's a fully fledged welterweight now, and he's going to be nowhere near the welterweight bout. And the money fight at welterweight is Jorge Masvidal, and to be honest, he already lost pretty convincingly to Masvidal. Yes, it was a doctor's stoppage, but it was only really going one way if Masvidal could manage his cardio in that fourth round. So, like you say, I don't think he's trying to box Jake Paul. I think, Jake Paul's trying to box Nate Diaz, of course, but Jake Paul's not trying to box anyone that could actually beat him. Let's be honest. He's beaten Tyron Woodley twice. He's beaten Ben Askren, and he's signed to fight Tommy Fury, and then Tommy pulled out the fight. So it's and obviously we got Jake Paul saying, I'll be back in August. Well, at this point, until they announce an opponent who is a boxer or an MMA fighter that is infamous for their stand-up, sign me. I'm not interested at the moment.
No, it's one of those we have to talk about because it ended up being relevant. But one thing that you mentioned is like people see the photo of Nate Diaz. You're asking a lot from Nate Diaz fans. You're asking them to think critically and look at something objectively. You are asking for way too much from Nathan Diaz fans, and that goes for Nick Diaz fans as well. So on this weekend we had 1X, and it was a banger up and down. We had 10 to 11 hours of fights starting at I think 5 a.m. our time. In the US, it was even worse. It started at midnight there. Shingiz Alizov was able to just absolutely pressure and chase down Sidichai constantly and win the featherweight kickboxing Grand Prix. A few other really nice highlights was Hiroki Akamoto versus Capitan for the bantamweight kickboxing championship. Was fight of the year leader. People we were talking about is this contender for a kickboxing fight of the year? I think it's already won kickboxing fight of the year. This fight
it's only March as well. It's
unreal. This fight was insane. Not even back and forth, just throwing in the pocket against each other for the full 5 rounds, right? This was madness.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to the Sidichai fight, he just never really got going, in my opinion. Whether that was because of the way Alisov was fighting when he was, we've seen the highlights all over social media of countering, catching the kick and landing the straight to the body, which I read something on Twitter. It was a great piece of analysis. I can't remember who I read it from, but when someone throws a kick, they're obviously, and then being countered with the body shot, they're having to both regain their balance, regain their position, and brace themselves ready for the impact. It's a brilliant counter by Alisov, and he landed it multiple times throughout the fight on Sidichai. And I think after he he never really got going. He couldn't kick into that next gear, it felt, which is surprising from Sittajai. It's not what we expect.
Yeah.
But yeah, Capitan again. I don't think it was really the fight that he was expecting. I think I almost feel like he expected to be respected more, and he wasn't given that respect. And obviously, it played against him in that one, because it was fair. In my opinion, it was fairly obvious going into the final round that he needed the finish. And again, like Sittajai, wasn't able to kick on into that second, third, fourth gear and really put it on his opponent and get him out of there. So obviously then, as we know now, it led to him picking up the L in that one.
Yeah, no, it was an amazing fight. And I think Capitan does struggle a lot going from, like, he's a lifetime Muay Thai guy competing in kickboxing, and like we saw him trying to reach for the clinch constantly as the counter, just trying to adjust that. The referee warned him a bunch of times before giving him a yellow card, gave him 2 yellow cards in that fight. Hey, that's a rough go there. It's a rough loss. Hiroki Akamoto has a little bit of a weird story as well, because of gym drama in Japan, and no one quite knows the true story, but because of gym drama, he got locked out of Japanese kickboxing. So he couldn't compete in K1 or K Festa or Crush or anything like that. So he went to One to compete, and good for him, because this has been a highlight reel. Like, this is one of the best moments I've seen in One championship history right here.
Yeah, for sure. And like you say, he's almost fallen upon that victory. He was never supposed to. He probably, I'll be honest, I didn't know that he was sort of ousted from those promotions. So it's like you say, he's almost, like I say, sorry, he's almost sort of fallen into One championship. One championship will have me. I'm actually doing quite well. And he's progressing, and then he wins the bantamweight world championship, which isn't an easy thing to do. When we say bantamweight, when we talk about, obviously Bellator have got their bantamweight MMA Grand Prix on at the moment, starting in the next few months. We've got the next pay-per-view is the UFC bantamweight title is playing, second fiddle. It's co-main event. In One championship, bantamweight, the lower weight division, it's like the WEC days of old. The lower weight divisions are the more competitive divisions. Let's be honest. Yes, we've got, we had Eduard and Bullers of the world competing at heavyweight, but these lighter weight classes, the flyweight, obviously we saw, DJ in action. I'm sure we'll go on to. We saw Angela Lee and Stamp Fairtex go at it in the main event, and that was at atomweight. Yep. These lighter weight classes for One championship are the ones that are money, really. And the the bantamweight kickboxing championship isn't a throwaway belt. It's if you win that belt now, Akimoto can progress on to bigger things, and I think the other promotions are really going to be kicking themselves that they sort of ousted him, because at the end of the day, he can go on to be a star now. He's got that kind of style, and you can, this fight alone, you can just pick up a highlights package from this fight alone.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was just insane. Yeah. So I completely agree with you. One championship's lighter weight classes, that's the money right there. Like, I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, they did their light heavyweight kickboxing championship. The guy got a first round knockout and then did his best to politely say, can I fight someone else from another promotion? Like, he's just like, there's no one in One. Can I fight someone from somewhere else? Their lighter weight classes are proper stacked. All these people would do well somewhere in the UFC. I mean, obviously kickboxing is a whole different thing, but those guys would do well in any kickboxing promotion, no matter where you put them. Moving forward onto the bantamweight Muay Thai champ, Nongo just landed an uppercut from outer space, and again, we hit another murder investigation on our hands. Yeah. What do you think of Nongo and his amazing uppercut?
I have no idea why the referee didn't call it off the second that it landed, to be honest. He almost gave Lobo a chance to get up, and it was like, did you not see what's just happened? Why are you not, the second that it landed, you need to be jumping in there to call the fight off? And he, like I say, he almost sort of, it appeared that he was giving Lobo as the best opportunity to gather his senses and get back into the fight. But I don't want to see him get back into any fight in that situation. Good God, it was. Yeah, no, I'm fine. Thanks for coming. And it's like you say, yet another week and yet another murder investigation on our hands. We had Alia Taporia last week, absolutely destroyed Jai Herbert, and now we've got this one. It's a rough sport sometimes to even watch, but when you again though, like you say, these lighter weight classes are where the money's made, and because typically these guys don't have one punch knockout power, their technique is crisp, and to see the technique on that uppercut, the technique on the uppercut was phenomenal, and it was, timing beats power, and precision beats power, timing beats speed, and the technique was so crisp. The uppercut landed, and obviously it was it's a one punch. It's not a TKO. It's a one punch knockout, and phenomenal finish.
There's a reason. Yeah, Nongo is maybe the best pound for pound in Muay Thai right now, and there's a reason for that. He's at least top 3, and he really shows it every fight. Like you said, crisp, just a perfect counter to the jab. But I want to move on to Superbon. He's a display of kickboxing masterclass here. He was avenging a 30-second knockout loss to Marek Grigorian. Superbon in this fight controlled from distance with machine gun like teep kicks to the body. At close range, he was landing knees to the body. From mid-range, he was throwing kicks, roundhouse kicks to the body. This guy just put on a perfect fight here. He was not struggling at any point, controlled it from start to finish. Marek Grigorian never adjusted the game plan, and I think that's because his guts were kind of gone by a certain point. Like, he didn't have a liver or lungs by the end of the fight, but he really did need to adjust game plans here. But Superbon, just a kickboxing masterclass here. What do you have to say for the man?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those fights where, because of their result previously, I just looked at it, was in 2018. So because of the fight previously, you think, well, has Grigorian just got the style to beat Superbon? But with that being said, if you don't look into the fight, you just see on the record, Grigorian beat Superbon. Yeah, it is what it is. Maybe he's just got the style. It was a 20-second knockout, and it's like we ask with Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor and Ben Askren and Jorge Masvidal, if that left hand didn't land, if that knee didn't land, and in this situation, if that right hand didn't quite land, does the fight play out how the result we got? Now, we can't complain about the original results of those fights. We can't complain about the 20-30 second knockout or whatever it was that Superbon suffered back in 2018, because he got caught, and it is what it is. But this fight really showed, like you said, it's how well can you fight when you can't take a full breath in, when you constantly got like a massive detriment, because when you get hit with that many body shots, it's your hands are going to be dropping to protect that body, and then it exposes your head, and then it's almost like kickboxing 101 is either attack the head and expose the body, or attack the body and expose the head. This time it was attack the body, expose the head. And I think on the night Superbon beats anyone at featherweight in a kickboxing bout, he was just dialed in, and like you say, you can't win a fight if you're fighting with next to no punch resistance in your midsection, and I think that's what we saw in this one.
Absolutely. I can't say enough good things about him. He looked absolutely perfect in this fight. He's coming off the Giorgio Petrosian head kick knockout to this fight. He's looking good. His next fight will be the featherweight champion on this undercard was with Shingiz Alazov, and the way that Shingiz Alazov fights, like, he very much walks forward, doesn't block shots, and really tries to walk you down a lot. I can't help but feel that this is such an idealistic, perfect matchup for Superbon. Like, no one's beating Superbon in this division, including the featherweight Grand Prix champion. I'm not off. This is correct.
No, I think I completely agree. Sisachai was able to even land on Alazov, which, again, it's crazy if you think about the way that the one card is put together. Yes, that was the sort of headline of part one, as it were, but he's fighting 6-7 fights before Superbon, and yet he's the champion of the division and whatnot. It's the way they put it together is crazy, but at the same time, it's the right way to put it together, if that makes sense. But yeah, I completely agree. A Superbon fight, like I say, Superbon on Saturday beats any featherweight in the world. And I think, unfortunately, for the champ, Superbon, like you say, it's just styles make fights, and a walk forward style and take one to land one style against Superbon isn't going to work. It's just not, and I think it'll be a good fight, but there's only so many shots that one can take, and again, anyway, let alone against someone with the striking prowess and power of Superbon.
Oh, it's going to be an ugly matchup. I'm a huge fan of Superbon. This guy is just, if you're trying to teach someone kickboxing, like watch Superbon and just emulate what that guy's doing because he's perfect. Eduard Folayang, the former MMA lightweight champion and one championship, gave a warm send off to John Wayne Parr, the Muay Thai legend. John Wayne Parr on I think a 4-fight losing streak. He says, "I just want to get 100 wins before I get out of here." And this fight was we throw legend around a lot in MMA, but or in combat sports, but John Wayne Parr is true legend of the sport. Fighting in a sport, like he was a Western guy competing in Muay Thai for his whole life, and he is an absolute legend of the sport. It was a nice warm send off. The crowd really absolutely loved him. He got almost a knockdown in round 3 there, but man, this was a form of elder abuse. John Wayne Parr looked like an old man. He doesn't have a hip. He doesn't have any knees anymore, and it kind of showed. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, for sure, and I completely agree with you. The fact that it's difficult. No one wants to see John Wayne Parr go out like that, but like you say, I'm just looking down his record now. He hasn't won since 2017 kickboxing. He's got 99 wins, 34 losses, and a draw. But you go back. He's fought a who's who, and Dwayne Ludwig in 2004, he fought and won by decision. He's fought Brad Riddell. He's fought some, these. Brad Riddell's a top 15 lightweight UFC fighter.
I know,
and he holds a win over him. And Riddell, sorry, they've traded wins between them. And if you look, he fought Nicky Holds in last time out. In last year.
Yeah.
It's. I think one championship was a phenomenal move for him. He did fight in the Bellator kickboxing, and he got some favourable matchups there. And then, as we've seen, his last 2 fights have been for one, which again I think it's the right move for him because he's moved obviously closer. As being Australian, he's moved sort of almost closer to home, not having to travel so far for events and whatnot. He's going to have a lot of support over there, and he's one of these guys like we saw in the UFC, Brian Barberena. You can't hate him because he just comes to a fight every time, and it's difficult to see him go down and go out the way that he did, on another loss. 45 years old now, he probably won't get to those 100 wins. But again, I'm not sure if it's truly the end for John Wayne Parr. I can see him in 3 years. He's a career mixed martial artist, career kickboxer. His first fight on, this is per Wikipedia, so it's take it with a pinch of salt, but 1997, and
25 years.
He's been fighting for almost as long as I've been alive. Quite literally, I was born in 96, and the guy's been fighting since 97. And, not like boxing and not like MMA, a loss has not ended his career. He had a negative, he was 3-4 after his first 7 fights. And then there's only so many sort of phrases that you can use for John Wayne Parr. He's a 10-time world kickboxing champion. And at the end of the day, he's, I believe his daughter is a fairly handy kickboxer herself, oh no, she's a fairly handy boxer. She had her first boxing fight and she won the Australian super flyweight title in her first fight. So it's I don't think this is the end for John Wayne Parr as far as being in and around the sport is concerned. He's certainly going to be an ambassador for kickboxing for the rest of his life. Whether he sort of maybe goes a little bit further into Bellator or a little bit further into one, I'm not sure, but I can see him having sort of a ambassadorial role in either of those ones. Bellator kickboxing, we haven't really seen an awful lot from them in the recent times, sort of post-pandemic. I think they've been more focusing on getting the MMA sort of side of things back to back up and running. But going forward, I think he's, stick him as almost like the matchmaker for Bellator kickboxing, or even the promoter for Bellator kickboxing. Scott Coker, with the greatest respect, does not know as much about kickboxing as John Wayne Parr. I think you struggle to find a lot of people that do know more about kickboxing than John Wayne Parr. So stick him as the promoter. I'm here for it. 133 kickboxing bouts, 14 boxing fights, and just a legend of the game. And it was tough to see him go out on a loss. He seemed all right, and then as soon as the post-fight interview came, he still broke down, didn't he? So, but yeah, there's nothing but respect for John Wayne Parr. And they were talking about a potential fight with Dan Hardy, boxing or Muay Thai fight a few months ago, and I don't need to see that. I'd see a little exhibition between the two. Have a move around, little touch sparring, but I don't need to see them two try and knock each other out. It's for John Wayne Parr, I think he will call it a day, but I, at the same time, do not be surprised if we see him pull on the gloves just one more time.
That's the thing of fighters don't know when to quit, and he actually should have quit. Like you said, 2017 would have been an absolute fine time to quit. He hasn't. Fighters don't ever really, like you said, he's going to come back. Retirement's always a joke in combat sports. The Dan Hardy fight, it just fizzled out. That had headlines, and people were reporting all over it. Dan Hardy, Dan Hardy hasn't fought since the year that Daniel Cormier made his debut in the UFC was the last year Dan Hardy fought. So we've seen the entire rise and fall of Daniel Cormier, and Dan Hardy's been retired the whole time. I don't know what kind of state Dan Hardy is in physically. You know what I mean? I don't know if he can do this still. I don't know if he can even compete with an old John Wayne Parr.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he obviously retired not out of choice. He had the GSP fight, didn't he? And I think he had the Carlos Condit knockout after the GSP fight, and then he's fought 2 or 3 times after that, or maybe just once after that. I can't quite remember. But he obviously had the Wolf Parkinson disease, something to do with his heart, but he was cleared to fight a few years ago now. And I think obviously he was a commentator, and he was let go from commentating with the UFC, and now
he's a really good commentator too.
Phenomenal. He's one of these people like a John Wayne Parr, where there's going to be few people that probably know the ins and outs and technicalities of MMA better than Dan Hardy, but it just after the Herb Dean with Jai Herb and Francisco Trinaldo controversy, I don't quite think obviously they're going to have him back. They might have him back in the future. He still does, I think, a little bit of work for BT Sport, but he has been taken off the BT Sport pre-show, as it were. That's been replaced with Michael Bisping, which again, I'm not complaining about Bisping's quality in my opinion, but he's got his own full reptile breakdowns on YouTube, so check them out, because they're excellent breakdowns. Obviously, he's in a relationship with the UFC fighter Veronica Macedo. She has her podcast, and obviously now he's got his Roughhouse gym sort of almost back up and running. I think it's out of sort of a Nottingham, Loughborough area, along with former UFC fighter Jimmy Warhead, and in and around the Midlands, obviously with myself being from the Midlands, there was a lot of fighters that go in to train and represent Hardy Warhead, and are doing really well. There's a lot of fighters that are doing really well. Only sort of 1 or 2-0 in the professional ranks at the moment, but they're getting finishes and they're performing well. When you've got Dan Hardy and Jim Warhead in your corner, it would be tough not to do well on the local scene for sure.
Yeah, it's like Dan Hardy, he could really do good fight breakdowns, and he always could, even in pre-fight interviews in the UFC and when he was commentating and what he's doing now. You can see that really well, that he knows his stuff. But it's like he can't. When he was fighting, he couldn't quite get the focus that he needed of if you took your own advice, you wouldn't be fighting in this way. But the guy just liked to scrap. He liked to throw down. And that's why he had knockouts, losses to Chris Lytle and stuff like that he shouldn't have had at that point in his career, or losses to Carlos Condit was a fair loss. That was a good loss there. But
he just landed that hook first, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a good one.
It just landed the hook ever so slightly before Dan Hardy, and that
was a good one.
It was lights out for Hardy, but it's a good fight. Dan Hardy, I think it still has. He's mixed martial arts through and through, I think, and he did a couple of years ago have a podcast himself and Mark Goddard, which was the insight from those two guys was phenomenal. I think that's sort of taken a back burner in recent years, but just listening to that and exactly, and just listening to them two just speak things through, break down refereeing and decisions and this and that and this and that, and it was on show just how knowledgeable both guys are. And but yeah, going back to the point, the John Wayne Parr versus Dan Hardy. Yeah, I know we got off on a tangent there, but no, the John Wayne Parr Dan Hardy fight, like you say, it just sort of fizzled out. It was on Twitter, and they were respectfully calling each other out, sort of not calling each other out, more suggesting a fight between the two. I don't want to say calling each other out because that's what we get with Jake Paul, but it just fizzled out and never really materialized, which is a little bit disappointing, but not too surprising at the same time.
No, yeah, it's been a long time for Dan Hardy. Moving up the card, Yoshihiro Sexyama at age 46 looks the best he ever has. Somehow he looks the biggest he ever has. That's a suspicious thing. Beats up Topakan Judah and Shinya Aoki. This is a they advertise it as a grudge match. I don't know who cares, but especially because Akiyama wasn't selling the grudge side of it, the bad blood side. He was like, I don't know what Aoki doesn't like about me. I've never even met the guy. We've never met in person before. I don't know why he hates me. But these two are JMMA legends. Between them, we have the UFC, Pride, Heroes, K1, Dream. I think maybe you got some Ryzen in there. You got Bellator and Strikeforce between them. Both these guys just kind of keep fighting. Maybe well past their prime. I still remember when Shinya Aoki was considered a really good prospect. Do you remember people were talking like Shinya Aoki versus BJ Penn is the fight to make, and it never really came together. Akiyama, I think, is a character who his character has paid off. This career has worked out really well for a guy who's just a pretty good fighter. He kept failing upwards at one point in his career because he would lose to Chris Lieben. And then he got rewarded with a fight with Michael Bisping. I
was going to say, I'm just looking through, he's fought Chris Lieben, Michael Bisping, then Vitor Belfort, and then Shields. Yes, he lost them all. Yeah. But, he made his debut at UFC 100.
Yeah.
In a split decision in a fight of the night. It was a fight of the night against Chris Lieben, fight of the night against Michael Bisping. I mean, the guy's just here for fun fights. And
failing upwards, like he gets rewarded 3 losses in a row, gets to get beat up by Vitor Belfort.
And at the time, 2010 to 2012, I hadn't picked up a win in the UFC, and yet 4 losses on the spin, 2 finishes. Yeah, and yet he gets rewarded with another fight.
Yeah, I know.
And and taking into account that just 3 fights ago he was fighting in the UFC. And that was in 2015. Sorry. Mm-hmm. I mean, the finish to this one. What did you think about the finish to this one? I haven't quite worked out how the finish. I've watched it a couple of times now, but the angle that I was able to watch it at, I didn't get it. I didn't see really what happened with the finish.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? Like Shinya Aoki, he if you put a bit of pressure on him and hit him, he does just float away. And this happened even in his prime when he was the Dream lightweight Grand Prix. Hakeem Hansen just kind of hit him a little bit, and Shinya Aoki was completely out of it. Like you just need to hit him a little, and he's kind of out. And none of those strikes looked hard. None of them looked like A+ power strikes. I think Akiyama was really tired by that point. He was being drowned for the entire first round. And then landed some light knees and punches, and typically Aoki just kind of dies when those things happen, and that's what we saw. Yeah. This is kind of A+. This is typical of Shinya Aoki work right here.
It just seemed like no more than cuffing shots to the forehead of Aoki, and like you say, maybe after the first round, yes, he was on the back of Sexyama, but it's difficult to stay, and maybe it's that triangle. He had the triangle on his back for what seemed like 3.5, 4 minutes of the first round at least.
Yep.
Maybe that just drained his gas tank completely, and like you say, it doesn't take an awful lot of shots to hurt him anyway.
No. On
top of being drained from a first round, but I think, as far as what's next, that's it now. Like you say, there's no bad blood, and Sexyama can just ride off into the sun on a victory over Aoki, who is still a legitimate fighter. But it does dent his credibility ever so slightly.
Yeah, he's gonna do some pro wrestling like he's been doing for a few years in Japan. There, he fights all the time and one of their promotions. He's got a fine enough career. This is what we talk about with middle class. Like you don't have to be in A plus plus shape. If you keep getting fights and you're enjoying yourself and not taking too hard of injuries, you can just keep doing this forever.
Exactly.
And Aoki will keep doing that. Akiyama will take his sponsorships. He's sponsored by like cell phone companies and Nike. He's fine. I wouldn't worry about it. Adriano Moraes. This was fine fight. This was the worst fight on the card. The referee had to warn them to engage, and this is Adriano Moraes does defeat Yuya Wakamatsu via guillotine choke. I don't have any hard hitting analysis on this one. I don't know. Demetrious Johnson, he's beaten Yuya already. He's lost to Adriano Moraes in a rematch. I think DJ against either of these guys. I'm sorry to be that guy, but what do you think?
Yeah, no, I still think DJ is pound for pound one of the best fighters on the planet.
Yeah.
Regardless of promotion, and like you say, I think he beats. I'm the same as you. I don't want to jump on the DJ train, but I just think he beats Moraes in a rematch. I just think he's got the. I just think he beats Moraes in a rematch, and like you say, I think these guys were kind of. It looked like they were reluctant to commit too heavily to the. To attacking each other essentially, which is something that we didn't get in the DJ versus Rodtang fight, which is obviously the fight after this.
And that was fun as hell. Let's jump into it anytime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Moraes fight for me, that was like you say, that was a go to the bar and get a beer fight. And, but make sure you're back in your seat for the DJ Rodtang fight. This was, if I'm right in thinking, it was scheduled for December. And then either the whole card got cancelled or one of the guys got injured. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Finally, we got it. And, this is going back to the days of Gracie Challenge almost and early mixed martial arts as far as this is a mixed rules fight. We're having one round, we're having Muay Thai, and that's where we'll start. Then we'll have an MMA fight.
Yeah.
Then we'll have a Muay Thai fight, and then we'll have another MMA fight.
Man, going back to the Gracie Challenge, it's almost like, man, what a history of MMA expert you might be. Man, we got to get more history of MMA from this guy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, keep an eye out for coming to a school near you. But no, it's I'm almost glad that this didn't go the distance because I have no idea how you'd score that. Because Rodtang won the first round, but DJ did really well.
He did
the first round.
He absolutely did.
He was catching Rod. I mean, I'd say probably 60-70% of people would have backed off with the shots that DJ landed, and I mean, it's if you see Rodtang take a back step in a Muay Thai fight, something's not right, But then the second round, Rodtang was instantly on the back foot, and I think it would have probably benefited him to just carry on going forward, to be honest, because he did step off, and then when he did commit, he swung that big, I think it was a big right hook, wasn't it? And then DJ sort of just ducked underneath it, took his back, and that's all she wrote. He did defend the rear naked choke pretty well for the most part. Obviously, he was put out in the end, but he defended that rear naked choke a lot better than we see everyday MMA fighters defend a rear naked choke. He was attacking the top hand, pulling DJ down, but with a grappler as seasoned as DJ, if he makes his way to your back, it's going to be a long night for you, to be honest, and especially if you don't have a history in grappling and MMA training. And what I wrote for one of my notes is that it's easier to avoid a tough stand-up fighter, so DJ avoiding Rodtang in the first round, than it is to learn wrestling and the ground game in a matter of about 8-9 months. This fight was announced. It's a lot easier to. DJ's already got that stand-up base, and Rodtang really doesn't have a ground game wrestling base. Yes, he can work inside the clinch, and the first round for me was messy. DJ was constantly looking to go to the clinch and look to almost take him down, and looked to wrestle him in that first round because it just comes to him as second nature. And then you can sort of tell as soon as he closes the distance, I've got to remember that I'm not allowed to take him down. I've got to either stay all the way out or be all the way in again. And it was messy, but yeah, the second round, I think that Rodtang would have benefited from going forward. And it's, crowded DJ, but I think, again, he was not scared, but he was wary of the takedown threat that DJ possesses, which is exactly what we saw. As soon as he committed to that big strike, DJ just, it's MMA wrestling 101, duck under the strike, take the back, choke him out. It was good performance by DJ. It was a fun fight.
And I was saying, yeah, I totally co-sign with everything that you're saying. I absolutely agree. First round, all pressure, controlling the center, pushing DJ back. Both landed good shots. DJ was having a good time. He was game in that Muay Thai round, and that was good to see. Rodtang did slightly defend a takedown. DJ just jumped on his back. He did slightly defend the rear naked choke. I was thinking if they did this fight with somebody else and that wasn't Demetrious fucking Johnson, if it was like an Ian McCall or a Manel Cape, Rodtang actually had a fighting chance, but they paired him up with DJ, who's been wrestling for 25 years. Like, he's been wrestling his entire life. He knows his stuff, but you pair him up against someone else, Rodtang didn't embarrass himself in this fight. Maybe we'll move up because we're running out of time here. Angela Lee versus Stamp Fairtex. I think they headlined with this one, and it was a good fight. It was a fun fight, and it was a really good fight on paper as well. But I think one wanted to show that they can promote stars, because these two are born and bred one fighters, whereas DJ and Rodtang are mixed fighters. They have other promotions. Rodtang doesn't even fight exclusively for one. Akiyama and Aoki are definitely not one fighters by any means. But Angela Lee and Stamp Fairtex, they are born and bred one fighters. Really fun first round. Kind of trading submission attempts here and there. I think the story of this fight is just Stamp Fairtex is tough. She can almost die and she will not tap out. She will not give up in any fight. She had a twister on her, didn't tap out. Did a really good job for training jiu-jitsu for less than 2 years and has been grappling with jiu-jitsu black belt here. What do you think of the fight?
Yeah, for sure. Like you say, I think that first round, Stamp almost finished it with that body shot that sort of absolutely crumbled Angela Lee. And it reminded me of Caitlin Chikagian when she fought Jessica Andrade, when she just gets smashed with that liver shot. And it takes a second. It's the liver shot lands, and then the body begins to shut down and they back up, and you bend over because it's, an instant human reaction. But she was able, obviously, as we know, Angela Lee was able to sort of get her senses or get her liver back together, as it were, and
get her liver back together. Yeah, no, she got hit. Yeah,
she and then in the second round, I think it was, we just showed the elite grappling of Angela Lee. She had the mounted triangle at one point, then she moved to the twister, and then obviously she finished it with the rear naked choke.
Yeah. And,
on paper, these are atom weights, but if you look, they both weighed in at 115 pounds, because obviously, so they're, Bellator and UFC straw weights, but atom weights in one championship. I wanted to get your view. How do you think Angela Lee would do in the UFC strawweight division? Because I think she's quality. There's no denying that. But how do you think she would do?
I think she'd be top 5, but the top 3 are so strong at women's strawweight in the UFC that I could not pick the Rose, Zhang, or even Joanna. I'd probably pick those 3 against Angela Lee, but otherwise Angela Lee is a solid number 4. And it's not due to Angela Lee being weak in any way. It's just because those 3 are so good, breaking off the center line. Like, they're doing striking, they're doing advanced striking classes in the cage. Like, those 3 are absolutely incredible. Where do you think she fits in the UFC scenario?
Yeah. I'd sort of echo what you're saying. I think she beats, just looking now, she beats all of the top from 15 down to 8. I think Tisha Torres might be a tough fight for her, because Tisha Torres has got, she's quick on her feet, so she can just avoid getting her back pressed up against the cage, and look to land with those quick shots and get out, and look to land with those, which I think she'll do against Mackenzie Dern when they fight in a few months. And I see Angela Lee similar to Mackenzie Dern, just with a better stand-up and not as good jiu-jitsu, which is kind of, that trade-off. I'd like to see an Angela Lee versus Mackenzie Dern. I think
I was going to say that one too. Yeah, it's a good one.
I think she'd just be slightly too big for her. She has fought up at flyweight, and Angela Lee is quite a, atom weight, but she's quite a small strawweight, let's say. But I hope she doesn't. I hope she stays in one championship and continues to be a massive star there, because you don't want her to sort of just fall into the UFC bubble, as it were, and just become yet another contender, and where people don't tune in to see her fights and aren't really too interested in her fights. You know, she'd probably come over to be as big a star as Ben Askren, who was, I think, third or fourth fight on the main card when he made his debut against Lawler.
Yeah.
Stay headlining these massive cards if I was Angela Lee and keep putting on stunning performances like she did on Saturday.
Absolutely. And it won the crowd over. Good headlines coming out of it. They're shaking hands with the baby backstage. Like, there's a lot of good optics coming out of this event. And one championship, like, if I'm not, without looking at any of their finances, this looked like a majorly successful event. This lit up Twitter, this lit up social media. I think for everyone in the industry, and this, I mean, congratulations. They've probably needed a win here. And I think one championship was the biggest winner of this weekend. But should we move forward to the UFC? Because there were some good ones here. I think the one that you want to do a victory lap for, Alexa Grasso and Joanne Calderwood. What do you, or Joanne Wood, sorry, pardon me. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It was tough for me to watch because I really like Joanne Wood, I think, or Calderwood. You know, she's just she's unfortunately she is a gatekeeper to the top.
I know
8, top 7. She was doing well in that first round, I feel, but she's just too susceptible to the takedown. You know, she's obviously, as we know, she's Scottish, but she trains out of Extreme Couture, and it's disappointing for her because, you know, she did put on good performances. She has put on good performances in the past. You know, She looked really good. I thought the Laura Murphy loss was a controversial one for me because I think, you know, she was at one point as well scheduled to fight Valentina, I believe. And it just hasn't gone right, and she's just lost the fight. You know, she was scheduled to fight Valentina, and then she lost to Jennifer Maia, then she beat Jessica Rai, then she lost a split decision to Laura Murphy, which I didn't personally agree with. I thought she did beat Laura Murphy. Yeah, but then she was pretty well dominated by Talia Santos. And in this one, again, you know, back-to-back rear naked choke losses. It's really difficult for Joanne Wood to know where she goes next. But I did see, you know, she's 36 now as well. Sorry, she's not at Extreme Couture. She's at Syndicate MMA. My mistake. But you know,
I know what you're saying.
She's never going to be a champion, unfortunately, for Joanne Wood. But at the same time, she put something on Instagram or Twitter to say, like, look, I'm still in the business. I'm still going in there having fun, and I'm still going to fight, which is, you know, I'm happy for it. She definitely takes a step backwards with this loss because Alexa Grasso, although she's phenomenal, she's not up there with the elite of the division yet, in my opinion. And I think Valentina now becomes that gatekeeper to the almost top 15 even, you know, which is disappointing because you've got flyweights that are on the brink, you know, Miranda Maverick, Erin Blanchfield, Marina Moroz, who's obviously just got the win last time out. But the fight for me is Molly McCann. That's, you know, Scotland versus England, Molly McCann, Joanne Calderwood. None of the girls particularly enjoy the sort of wrestling and grappling game. Molly McCann's much better than Joanne Wood in the wrestling and grappling game, but Wood versus McCann, for me, it's the fight to make. McCann's been ranked before and she's dropped out of the rankings. Calderwood's obviously ranked now, but she'll drop down a few. Book that fight because I want to see that fight. I think it'll be a really fun fight and really fun build-up as well.
I totally goes on with you. Two weeks in a row, and it's just a fun fight, right? We don't have to pretend that these two are going to be future all-time greats. Fun fight right there. Pair them up. Man, I like Alexa Grasso though. I think she can crack that into the top 5 even more than she has now. I like that a lot. Curtis Blaydes stands, doesn't wrestle at all with Chris Daukaus and knocks him out in the second round. Absolutely electrifying the Ohio-based crowd. This was a big event too. Like, Ohio came out for this one. But Curtis Blaydes, it's tough because where do you put him? He beats everybody behind him. He probably doesn't beat anybody ahead of him. What do you think of our boy, Curtis Blaydes?
Yeah, like you say, even the commentators, Cormier and Bisping was on comms as well, wasn't he? And you know they were saying, you know, expect Blaydes to go for a shot anytime now, you know, or expect Curtis Blaydes to shoot for a double leg, or expect him to look to stand, see where he's at, and then you know pull the single. And he didn't.
No.
and he didn't even feint, and he didn't even look like he was going to go for a takedown.
Nope.
And then in the second round, maybe that's in the back of Daukaus' mind that he hasn't shot yet. Why hasn't he shot yet? He's going to shoot. He's constantly going to shoot, and that's the risk you run when you fight someone like Curtis Blaydes, is that he's so good at wrestling, and he's so good in the takedown realm, as it were, that you are constantly thinking, right, he's going to take me down in a minute. He's going to take me down in a minute. And then he's just come upstairs in early in the second round as well. It was 17 seconds in the second round is when the fight finished. So you're talking sort of, probably about 10 seconds before he knocked him down, because he did hit with some ground and pound. And for me, Curtis Blaydes called out the wrong guy. He called out Ciryl Gane, and he needed to call out Tom Aspinall or Tai Tuivasa. I know them two are sort of almost looking like they're going to fight each other due to the call out last week from Tom, but fans are not as interested. Exactly, fans are not as interested in Ciryl Gane at the moment, because he's coming off a loss, and because he was out wrestled in that loss.
Yeah,
Tom Aspinall's got a lot of heat about him at the moment. Tai Tuivasa, a lot of heat about him at the moment. These two guys would have been, for me, the ones that Curtis Blaydes calls out. He sort of respectfully gave props to Stipe without calling him out, really, which it was nice, because Stipe obviously in his home state, but it was, I think Curtis Blaydes missed a trick, especially after the performance that he put on, because it was a phenomenal performance. But I think he did miss a trick. With Chris Daukaus, I'm not really all that surprised. Is the biggest win on his record Alexei Olenek or Shamil Abdul Rakhmonov? That was his last win, but he then goes up to fight Derek Lewis and loses. Now he fights Curtis Blaydes and loses. You can't go from Shamil to Derek Lewis and think it's going to go all well, as it were. I think he takes a big step back in the rankings now for his next fight, and fights a Walt Harrison or Augusto Sakai, Ty Bora, one of these guys that's in and around his ranking. Or like maybe Curtis Blaydes was suggesting, drop down to light heavyweight. He's 230 something apparently. He weighed in at.
Good. Yeah.
Let's double check what he weighed in at for this one, and he's not. It's just not a huge heavyweight. Well, he weighed in at 243, but he was carrying a lot of body fat, and I think that's probably why Curtis Blaydes stood with him, because he wasn't scared of the stand up. Yes, he's got knockouts on his record, but he's just not as big as Curtis Blaydes. And I mean, I didn't even realize, he's older than Curtis Blaydes as well. But at 6'3", 76-inch reach advantage, the pace that he can fight at and that he throws punches at, someone like, we've seen he's obviously susceptible to the knockout. Tai Tuivasa knocks Chris Daukaus out. Yeah. And the pace that he fights at, Tom Aspinall plays with him, in my opinion. And it's probably the same with Curtis Blaydes. That's probably why he didn't. He struggled with the guys that have got these one punch knockout power that you would assume that he'd win. He's got 2 losses on his record to Francis, when Francis didn't wrestle at all, and he's got the loss to Derek Lewis, who is notorious of not being a great wrestler.
I know.
Tai Tuivasa probably knocks him out, despite the fact that Tai Tuivasa's takedown defense is questionable. It's, for me, Blaydes is a weird one. He seems like the kind of guy that potentially steps in on late notice in a heavyweight title fight and gets the victory. Yeah. But always will fall just before he gets to a title shot himself. A Michael Bisping. He's a Michael Bisping, or take the fight on short notice and probably win the belt. But will he ever actually get to the dance himself? I'm not so sure.
It's such a coin flip with him, because you can also picture a Ciryl Gane fight. Curtis Blaydes probably gets beat up, he gets punched a bunch, and he gets knocked out in that fight. Or flip the coin, and Curtis Blaydes maybe just out wrestles him for the full time. It could go either way. Exactly. You never really know, but he is hittable. He is knockoutable. Yeah, like you said, he probably loses to even Tai Tuivasa after he gets out wrestled or something. I don't know. It's tough to pick what the future of of Curtis Blaydes looks like. I'm not entirely certain myself, but Brian Barberina and Matt Brown did their thing. They did what they were scheduled to do. They do what they always do in these fights. And
I mean, fight of the night. Yeah, it was a really fun fight, and yeah, like you said, they came, they threw down,
Yep.
they went 3 rounds, and I saw Matt Brown said on, I think it was Twitter, said that, oh, I thought I won the first 2 rounds, so I took the third round off. Now he's experienced enough to know that you can't do that. You can't, in a way, you can't trust your corner to say, yeah, you definitely won those 2 rounds, you know. And you know, does it do anything for Matt Brown? No. Does it do anything for Brian Barberena? I know that he was speaking about the last fight, and that was the last fight in his contract. He gets signed again because he's always in exciting fights.
Yes.
If you remember, I think, was it last? I can't remember when it was, when he fought Vicente Luque in one of the fights of the year that year. You know, his top 3 fights of the year that year.
Mm-hmm.
Is he ever going to be champion? No chance. Is he always going to be on exciting fights?
Yes.
For sure. You know, Vicente, yeah, so it's 2019 he fought Vicente Luque, and that was one of the fights of the year. And then he fights Randy Brown. You know, he's fought good guys. He went the distance with Colby Covington. He went the distance with Leon Edwards. He was knocked out in late in the third round by Vicente Luque. Randy Brown in the third round. Now he's gone 3 rounds with Matt Brown. I think, you know, we keep him in the UFC. You know, he's got a win over Jake Ellenberger, finish victory over Jake Ellenberger, finish victory over Sage Northcutt. We keep him in the UFC because he is money. And, you know, to be the greatest respect to Brian Barberena, to be higher on the fight card than Kai Kara France and Askar Askarov is certainly questionable. But because he's in these type of fights, that's why they put him where they put him on these fight cards.
Yeah, that's it. It was an exciting fight on paper. It was an exciting fight coming out. I don't know what the future of Brian Barberena, probably doing this kind of thing, just fighting other brawlers like himself, but he's going to win some, he's going to lose some, and he's going to have fun fights. I think the real headline, Kai Kara France defends. He reverses takedown. He reverses submissions, controls with the jab at times. He gets backpacked and takes the guy off of him against Askarov, probably the best wrestler in flyweight. Kai Kara France has really turned it around. He has fixed the holes where he was a little bit too excited to fight. He's fixed a lot of things, but he's on a couple of little win streak now, moving up high in the flyweight rankings. What do you do with him? Kai Kara France, our boy.
Yeah, I completely, you know, just looking on the MMA Sucka staff picks, only 4 people picked Kai Kara France.
Yeah.
Including myself. And, you know.
Me too.
You know.
I mean, sorry, I picked Askarov, but I was totally wrong.
Yeah. So, yeah, you know, majority of people did on a. Askar Askarov, only 4 for Kai Kara France. And, you know, Kai Kara France should be fighting for the belt next. But I think the UFC has scuppered themselves now by pretty much booking Moreno versus Figgy 4 already. Like, you know, that's very much in talks. I'm not sure if it's official yet, but that's the fight where both of them are fighting next. And, you know, we'll go on in a second to talk about another fight that I don't think they should have booked ahead of this weekend. But Kai Kara France is game. He's powerful, as we saw against Cody Garbrandt. Now he can sort of fix the holes in his wrestling game. He probably, you know, out of nowhere, he'll beat Davison Figueiredo, but then he'll lose to a Brandon Royval and Alex Perez. You know, he's one of those fighters where is he, even if he wins, if he wins the flyweight belt, is he the best at flyweight? There's always going to be questions. With someone like an Usman, there's no question. He's the best.
Yes.
Welterweight in the UFC. Israel Adesanya, best middleweight. Volkanovski, best featherweight. You know, these are unquestionables. There'll always be questions around Kai Kara France until he defeats Figueiredo twice, Moreno, beats Askarov again.
Yeah.
You know, beats all these guys. But I think he's got a personality. He comes from that city kickboxing gym that we all know and love. And he's got a personality, which is what the UFC are constantly crying out for in all their divisions, especially down at the lower weights.
He's a ton of fun.
Exactly. You know, I think that's why Mohamed Mokaev has done so well. You know, this week I've seen him call out about 6 or 7 different people, including Sean O'Malley.
Yeah.
And because he's got a personality and he's got, you know, the knockout power.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Moreno is a phenomenal fighter, really exciting, great personality, has a ground game rather than knockout power. That's fine. You know, you're getting these highlights from these guys, which is probably why they're booking the 4th fight between Figgy and Moreno, because you know, at the end of the day, these are the two, without doubt, best guys in the division. And, you know, flyweight is calling out for those stars since
Need it.
as much as he's cringed since Henry Cejudo sort of left the division. But they need it, like you said.
Miss Henry every day.
I don't miss his tweets because he's still tweeting out every day, calling out McGregor and whatnot. But yeah, you know, I think the fight itself is really good, but you know, slightly alluding to what I just said.
Yeah,
Manon Fiorot absolutely dominated Jennifer Maia in the wrestling game, grappling game, stand-up game. Why they booked Caitlin Chukagian the day of, I saw it come out on Saturday. They booked her against Amanda Ribas. I cannot understand this fight. Ribas making a flyweight debut against the second best, third best flyweight on the planet, and Ribas is coming off one victory, and it wasn't that convincing a victory.
No.
Fiorot should be fighting Chukagian next.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the final eliminator, without a doubt, you know. And this is what's frustrating me, because you've got a woman in Manon Fiorot she's what, 4-0 in the UFC now.
Yep.
Two finishes, and then she's just beaten Jennifer Maia, who is
high ranking,
solid. High ranking, yeah. And yeah, you put her. Where do you go if you look down flyweight now? Obviously, she's not going to get a title shot. Valentina's booked against number 4, Talia Santos. Caitlin Chukagian's booked. Jessica Andrade's dropping down to strawweight again. Laura Murphy booked. Alexa Grasso maybe, because obviously they fought on the same card. So that, but again, I'd argue that Fiorot is my Alexa is kicking up in the background. Yes, my Alexa started talking to me in the background. Yeah, I thought someone was behind me. Oh God. But yeah, so I completely lost my time. Yeah, no, Alexa Grasso, you know, does that really do anything for Manon Fiorot? My opinion, she deserves a bigger fight than Alexa Grasso. So she's got to now sit out and wait for, you know, Chukagian's booked in May.
Yeah.
Probably wait for Chukagian to beat Amanda Ribas by decision, and then book that for sort of, you know, October, November time. But yeah, Manon Fiorot, I think, is going under the radar. I saw people were reading in far too much, you know, people saying, oh, look at the way she's walking up the stairs on weigh-ins day and stepping onto the scale, she looks stiff, maybe she has an injury. And then the way she fought was just amazing. Like let's not try and make people get injuries that they clearly haven't got. She's weighing in, she's probably just stiff from sitting in a bath for 10 hours prior to it. And I thought she looked really good. And the step in sidekick that she was doing to an overhand right, she was closing the distance with a sidekick and then landing the overhand right. She threw the same combination about 6 or 7 times in the 15 minutes, and I mean, it worked. I think she dominated Jennifer Maia. I think Jennifer Maia will be frustrated with herself.
But yeah, now we got Fiorot, who's definitely cracking into the top 5 now. I know that they booked Caitlin Chukagian. It is a weird fight, but I don't think the UFC is ever going to give Chukagian another chance at the title. Like, I understand why. Like, even in her wins, she doesn't look that convincing as a person who can challenge against a good fighter. She's just, Caitlin Chukagian is she wins sometimes and she loses other. I don't know what to say about this person who's kind of middling. I feel like Fiorot must be able to jump the line if she gets another 2 wins together. They must allow her to jump and get the title. They have to. They can't put Chukagian back in there.
No, I mean, I really like Chukagian. I think she's really good, but again, she's sort of she's like a Leon Edwards, where how many wins can she put together? The only losses that she's got at flyweight, I mean, she lost to Jessica Eye, but after that got a title shot. Then she lost in the title shot convincingly to Valentina. And then she lost to Jessica Andrade, who's no longer in the division. So if you look at people since she fought Shevchenko, who are currently in the division, she's 4-0. But they've all gone to the decision. She got 17 wins. She's only finished 3 of her fights, of which, you know, none are in the UFC. I don't think. No, none are in the UFC. She's never finished a UFC fight, and she hasn't finished a fight since 2016. Now, I'm not saying that you have to finish fights to to make it in the UFC, because wins speak for themselves.
But let's be
with
real.
That being said, when you've got people like Ferro putting on, she's finished 2 fights in the UFC. When you've got people like Alexa Grasso who's finished multiple fights in the UFC, and looking down the division, you've got Talia Santos finishing fights. Joanne Wood can finish fights, but has got an exciting start. Andrea Lee finished her last fight against Cynthia Calvillo. Casey O'Neill has finished all of her fights apart from against Roxy Modafferi. But even in that fight, she scored the 3rd most significant strikes in UFC history for a 3-round fight.
Yep.
Caitlin Chikay, we did see against Jennifer Maia, she risked it a little bit more. She got involved in the pocket a little bit more, but you can't break a habit of a lifetime. But she did fight up at bantamweight. Rebus is coming up from strawweight, so hopefully she'll sort of hold a power advantage over Rebus, and hopefully she'll put it all out there and look to say, look, if a decision victory isn't going to do it for me, I need to go out there and knock Rebus out, and hopefully she looks to do that, because it's not a boring style, but at the same time, it is a risk-averse style that isn't always the most interesting style for us to watch.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's frustrating when she wins, because we're not. What do you do with her? The UFC doesn't love her. The UFC is not going to throw her anything. Manon Farrow is a proper good fighter. She's talented and developing well. I don't know what to do, but let's look ahead a little bit. Anything else on this UFC Fight Night that we want to talk about before we move forward?
No, Neil Magny and Matt Diakese picked up victories. Matt Diakese wrestled, which is something that does come as a surprise to many, but he is a solid wrestler. And Neil Magny defeated Max Griffin after being badly dropped in that first round. But Neil Magny does what Neil Magny does. Call out of Hamzat. Okay. I mean, I think he's just hoping that Hamzat loses to Gilbert Burns next weekend. If not, I think Wonderboy's the fight to make both of them, fringe top 5 guys. Now Wonderboy's obviously coming off the 2 losses, and Magny won't particularly look to take Wonderboy down. He'll look to pressure him up against the fence, but with Wonderboy's movement, I think he can. I think it's a favourable fight for Wonderboy as opposed to fighting a Colby Covington or someone who is going to look to take him down like Gilbert Burns did.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think all those fights, and Neil Magny doesn't beat many of the people ahead of him. And I know we got to mix up welterweight a lot more because it hasn't moved, but I'm not sure that Neil Magny beats anyone. But yeah, man, Wonderboy Thompson could use a win. I'm always into seeing that,
Exactly.
But yeah. Oh, yeah, so pretty good UFC Fight Night. Did well in Ohio. Looking ahead to this weekend, I can't believe how little it is. I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel here. We got a couple of Cage Warriors, ex-MMA 4. We got a PFL Challengers this weekend. Looking to kickboxing, there's an open weight tournament, which I wouldn't recommend watching. Tenshin Nasukawa is fighting his stablemate, his friend. There's no sumo wrestling this weekend. There's no boxing. Golovkin Murata is not till the week after that. What are we doing this weekend, man? What am I trying on? There's nothing.
I mean, I think for me, I'll just be getting I've got a keys to victory for Alexander Volkanovski. I'll just be getting that ready this weekend. At the end of the day, it's pretty thin on the ground. Even we've got Savannah Marshall fighting this weekend, who I'm a huge fan of. It's a setup fight for Savannah Marshall to fight Clarissa Shields in a few months' time at the end of the year. And Savannah Marshall, I think it's no surprise to any of the MMA Sucka, anyone that reads MMA Sucka, that I'm a huge Savannah Marshall fan. I think she knocks out Clarissa Shields. She's too big. But that's probably the highlight for me for this week. That's the only fight that I'll really be tuning in to watch. Maybe catching up on a little bit of sort of pre-fight hype for Volkanovski, Korean Zombie. But yeah, like you say, it's a pretty thin week this week.
This is the Marshall versus Hermans this weekend. Hermans from Belgium, 11-3. That's about all I can tell you about this person. That's all I know about Hermans.
Yeah, for me, if it's not Clarissa Shields, Savannah Marshall doesn't struggle, and I don't even think she struggles particularly against Clarissa Shields. I think she's just too big and too vicious. But Savannah Marshall will look to probably get the fairly early knockout, and she should be calling out Clarissa Shields. And it's a shame because this fight was meant to go down a few weeks ago when Shields was meant to be on Savannah Marshall's undercard, and I think it got put back. So the two won't be fighting on the same card, but the two schedules will work out, as Shields only fought a matter of months ago against Kozin, and that was dreadful. But it is what it is.
Well, let's get out of here. MMA Sucka crew. My name's Tim Wheaton with Frazer Krohn. See y'all next week. Frazer, any last words?
I mean, next week's going to be mostly a preview show, so look forward to that, because we won't like we were alluding to, there won't be too much to break down. So yeah, keep it locked to MMA Sucka this week. We'll have plenty of maybe more opinion-based articles this week, as it's looking a little thin on the ground.
Cheers, folks.
Take it easy.